Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is your host Fardeen Khan and you're watching another video from Code Panthers. Today the topic of discussion is environments in Python. So before we dive into that, of course, we need to know what environments are. So imagine you are having a number of projects to work with from the same client, but he has two different requirements. One project needs to use Python version 3.6 while the other project has to use the Python version 3.9. On top of that, the pip packages that both the projects are using will be the same, but again with different version. So for example, you are using pandas of say let's 3.1 version in one project, and the another project will use pandas version 4.1. So how do you manage these two projects by using different versions of the same software on the same system? Is it even possible? Well, if you are on Linux and even on Windows, I think by managing the environment variables or the path variables, you can, by having aliases or commands, for example, call one Python 1, call second Python 2, and then manage it like that. But even though that won't be a very ideal solution, what you want is for each of them to have an isolated dependencies and all these requirements that they have, that is different versions of Python and the packages, to work with only that project and not interfere with other projects in your library. So for example, what I want to say is create a boundary for the project to work within, in which it will have its own dependencies, its own packages, everything that it needs specifically for itself. So what I will do is create two environments for both of the project. For one, I will have Python version 3.9. For another, I will have Python version 3.6. Also, I will have two installations for all the packages. Since we are using two different Python versions, the packages that we will be installing for them will be only exclusive to them. So for example, on 3.6 version, I am installing pandas 3.1. It doesn't mean that the Python version 3.9 will have access to that pandas version. We will have to install it separately. So now that we know what environments are, they are basically a boundary around a project in which we can place all our dependencies, all our libraries, so that they don't interfere with another such boundary, with another such project, which will have different versions. So how do we actually create this? So there is a concept called virtual environments in Python that allows us to create these sandboxes or these isolated environments in which we can manage our project. So let us look into that. If you do not have Python installed in a system, I will highly suggest look at my video for a few seconds. You can skip to the timestamp where I am actually downloading and installing Python, so that you can come back and look at this video. Okay, so let me open the terminal. The only thing that you need is the access to the Python exe. If you don't have that, you have to install and place the path in it, the environment variable. Okay, so let's type Python. What version do we have here? Okay, so we have 3.9.1. Now I want to use this Python command to create a virtual environment. Now how do I create that? So it is simple. First of all, you need to go into the folder in which you want to actually create your project. So for example, I want to make a directory of project 1. Okay, so now I am in the folder in which I will create my Python code. I have access to the Python and the command line using the keyword Python. Now M for installing or running a command on the exe. What I want to do is access the so what I want to do is access another script venv, which is responsible for executing the code for generating our virtual environments. So what we are doing is using the python.exe file to run a script by the name of venv, which will take as an argument the directory that we want to create our virtual environment in. But since we are already in that directory, I will just click dot and I will let it go. It will take a bit of time, but once that is over, we will be notified here. So again, I will repeat. What we did is use the Python command with the flag of -m, and then passed in another script name that will be running, taking one argument, that is the directory in which we want to create our virtual environment. Since we are in the same directory, we use the dot. If you want to know more about it, I think we can run this command. No module named help. I mean, yeah, that won't help. Okay, so this says mod run library module as a script. So we have a module or a library called venv already installed with the Python default installation, and using the -m, we are just using that as a script. So we are running that module. So now if I point out what I have in here is include lib, some number of files, some number of folders have been created. Let us go to that directory. So here is project 1. You can see we have some include folder, a lib folder, and the scripts folder. Now the script folder is the most important one because this will act as our Python installation folder. So whatever scripts that come with the installation of Python will be present here. Now if I move back, in the lib side packages will contain all the pip packages that we will install with it. Okay, so now let us try to see what kind of packages are already installed in it. But before that, you must now be a bit confused. Like we have one python.exe here and another python.exe in the default installation folder. So how are we going to differentiate between them? So that is a solution that is handled by this file called activate.bat. Now what it does is whenever you are running in a command prompt, you have to execute that script, scripts.activate. When you will run this command, the name of the folder in which your virtual environment is present will appear to the left of your path. So for example, project 1 was the name of my folder in which I created my virtual environment. So by default, the name of the virtual environment will also be project 1. And now this signifies that we are not in the default Python installation, but using the interpreter provided by this new virtual environment. Now, since we use the same version of Python, that is 3.9.1, for creating this, we didn't specify any Python version for it different than 3.9.1. So both of them will be same. But if I do pip list, I will only get 2 packages. This says that whenever we are using venv module to create a virtual environment, it is installing only the necessary packages. If I want to deactivate this, then I think I will have to. Is there a script for deactivate? Yes, there is a script for deactivate. Again, if we do deactivate, the project 1 virtual environment has been discarded and now we are in the main Python interpreter. If I do pip list now, you can see a list of packages that I have installed personally for my use case. And this is very different from the packages that we saw in the project 1 virtual environment. So that is how you create a virtual environment. You can treat that Python interpreter in project 1 the same way that you use any other Python interpreter. There is no difference. Only difference is that whenever you are having this interpreter, this virtual environment, it will be completely isolated from any other virtual environment, any other interpreter. So now let us create another one. Let us create another virtual environment by the name of project 2. So first I will create the folder. Move into the folder and again run the command that was python m venv dot. You can see right now, without activating the project 2 virtual environment, we are looking at the main Python interpreter. To activate this new virtual environment, we will go to the activate.bat file. Okay, so now you can see that project 2 virtual environment has been installed and activated. Sorry, not pip install, pip list. So again, we are at this juncture where we have two environments in Python. Both of them are different. Okay. Now let us talk about installing a different version of Python for your virtual environment. Sadly, for the default installation way or the implicit way that we were performing this, that is Python -mvenv dot, for creating our virtual environment will not work with let's say different versions of Python. Like you cannot use 3.9.1 to create a different version of virtual environments Python interpreter. This is because it will only create virtual environments that have the same Python version as that we are using to create it. But for example, if you have two versions installed, for example, Python 2.7 is installed as well as Python 3.6 is installed, and you have some way that you can invoke both of these commands differently. For example, Python 2 by this and Python 3 by this. Or even on Linux, you can see Python 3.6 or Python 2.7. So for example, if you have more than one number of installations of Pythons in the Linux or Windows environment, then you can use Python 2.7 -venv, and that will help. That will help you create any number of virtual environment by the version that you are specifying. But if you only have one Python version installed, then sadly using this command you will be only able to get a virtual environment will have the same version. So I think that was all about this video, about what actually environments are, virtual environments are, how you can create them if you already have a version of Python installed. In the next video, we are going to talk about virtual env, another package by the Python community, which specifically solves some of these problems. For example, how do we manage all of these Python environments? How do we create virtual environments that have a different version than the one that is already installed, etc. and etc. So do keep a lookout on the video, and your support is immensely appreciated. If you like this video, then hit the subscribe button to show your support, hit the like button, and share this video with your friends who are equally enthusiastic about programming. And you can also hit the bell icon to get the latest notifications from the videos that we upload. Thank you for your time, and we hope to see you in the next video. Thank you. Sayonara.